My first prototype is a 2D platformer where the player must reach the end of the level in 9 seconds or they fail and have to start again. There are currently 5 levels in total. Failing any level will set you back to level 1. It is a combination of memorizing each level and mastering the mechanics in an effort to complete the game. It is a difficult challenge that yields a great amount of satisfaction upon completion. I had several inspirations for this prototype, mainly originating from the games I play in my free time, Team Fortress 2 and Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Both of these games are made in the Source engine, which allows for a lot more of fun movement mods to be added through community servers. These mods appear in jump map formats where you have to get from start to finish whilst being timed. Once completed, your time is logged on a global leaderboard. The main joy from these types of game modes for me is trying to get a faster time. This can sometimes mean a mistake would mean resetting, which is what I've tried to emulate in this game. The main challenge during the development was the production of the levels. Each one had to be significantly different from one another, yet short enough to be completed in under 10 seconds. Having levels of similar layouts and direction would make for a boring game, so I made sure most levels had different endpoints as well as different jumps to make and a lot of verticality throughout the levels. A smaller challenge I had was to find an exact time for the levels to be done under. I tested every level to find the minimal time for each level, eventually landing on 9 seconds, as level 4 could be done in 8 seconds, but only if the player was absolutely perfect in every movement they made. I wanted a little leeway with the levels, otherwise the player might end up getting frustrated and throwing their controller at the screen. The mechanics were the most important part, so I made a flat level to test them on, which ended up being the tutorial area you start in. They were simple mechanics that didn't take long to implement. It was more of fine-tuning them to make the movement feel more fluid. If I was to develop it further, the first thing I would do would be to make my own asset pack for the game, rather than using the standard asset pack from Unreal. This would include making my own platform tiles, as well as my own animations for the character. Secondly, adding some mechanics such as sliding and wall jumping will add other challenges to the game the player has to overcome. Lastly, making more levels is also a good addition to the game. My plan for this is to have different chapters with 5 levels each one implementing different mechanics and themes. For example, Chapter 1 is the standard theme and layout with the base mechanics. Chapter 2 implements sliding and is in a forest. Chapter 3 would introduce wall jumping in a mountain theme. And Chapter 4 is an ice theme where the platforms are slippery. My second prototype is an infinite runner with no obstacles. You get points for the amount of time alive, with a rolling counter at the top of the screen. Since there is no way to lose the game other than quitting the application, you could essentially leave the game running and get an infinite amount of points. Two things inspired me for this prototype. The first was something I used to play around with in Python, using a simple Fibonacci code. The code would print the Fibonacci numbers on the screen based on the number you typed in. Typing in 5 would print out all the numbers up to the 5th Fibonacci number, and typing 1,000 would print up to the 1,000th number. In an attempt to crash a school's computer, I looked up pi to 1,000 decimal places, removed the decimal place, and put that in as the number. Whilst this didn't cause the computer to crash, it produced a seemingly infinite stream of code that would keep printing numbers forever, which I thought was pretty cool. The second inspiration was a glitch on an old mobile game, Temple Run, where if you swipe twice in quick succession to make the player move, the player would glitch out and be on an obstacleless level, racking up score until the app was turned off. My main and only challenge from this project was creating a platform for the character to run on that looped endlessly, giving the appearance of the character moving. This was fixed by giving a speed to the texture in the blueprint of the platform. In terms of developing it further, the task is to essentially try and make it more useless. To me, this means pointless mechanics, things like power-ups, enhancing speed or points gained, or having the character being able to fire projectiles that do absolutely nothing. My third and final prototype uses voice commands. The player can use commands forward, back, left, and right to move around the level. The objective is to avoid being touched by the enemy in the level, who is moving towards you at all times. My inspiration for using voice commands came from YouTube videos that I watch. A channel by the name of Doug uses voice commands in his videos to complete challenges in various games. For example, driving from point A to point B in GTA 5 using only voice commands. Implementing voice commands was an obvious challenge. I researched different ways of putting them into the Unreal game engine I was using to create my prototype. However, the only methods that I could find that didn't use any external software either cost too much money or required coding, which I'm not very good at. Eventually, I ended up using a voice command external software called VoiceBot, which is the same software that is used in the aforementioned videos. The prototype is fairly simple at its base. After adding a simple timer for the level, I worked on the enemy. This involved creating a separate plane for the enemy to walk on, which allowed it to map out its surroundings, to go around objects in the level to get to the player. Due to the slight delay that voice commands have, the enemy had to be made slow, otherwise it would be an impossible game. Next, I had to fine-tune the voice commands so that the character moved far enough with one voice command to compensate for the command delay. If I were to develop it further, I would make more levels with more verticality so the game isn't so simple. This could include ramps going up to platforms, as well as obstacles that the player has to jump or crouch under. This would obviously require extra voice commands for such actions. I could also introduce additional enemies into the game, meaning you would have to avoid more than one, making it much more challenging.